Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We are here with Harry Moseley, who is the CIO for Zoom, aka the company that allows us all to work in our shorts and sandals pretty much every day of the week. I think you're known as the death of the pants industry. Really happy you're here, and also wanted to take a moment to thank you for joining as well, and thank you for all you're doing over at Zoom. Obviously, the past 18 months, during a pandemic, I feel like have been kind of a whirlwind. It's hard to keep track of the time of day. It's hard to understand what day it is. But I think at the same time, Zoom has really become this kind of, permeated part of our life. It's now the daily tool. You're effectively the Kleenex or the Xerox, that's the lexicon, right? So everybody does a Zoom, or even my, parents who are 83, 84 know how to Zoom at this point. So I think it's, kind of an interesting world that we're in. Given the kind of gift of hindsight, looking back 18 months, what's the biggest lesson that you've learned over the course of this? And what would you have done differently, given the rapid growth that you've had to deal with, given some of the kind of, probably bumps and stumbles that maybe we don't always get to see, but are certainly always happening kind of along the way? What's that major lesson that you would kind of bring back and do over?
Yeah, I think that it's sort of well. First of all, Anthony, pleasure to be here with you. It would be nicer to be in person, but virtual is fine. And like you just said a moment ago, it's a privilege to be able to sit here in shorts and sandals. I don't know how that would work if we were in person, but maybe that'll change too in time.
Maybe, who knows?
Maybe. Who
Maybe.
knows? Yeah, it's good. And also, I got my pandemic puppy here as well.
Hmm.
So
You
maybe
got
we're
you got
gonna.
plants and succulents in the corner too, with brand new barrage of a whole forest.
What's that?
You got like plants and succulents and like brand new like
Yeah, yeah,
plant.
it's like I got all sorts of stuff going on here. It's like, it's yeah, it's cool. Lessons learned over the last 18 months. Well, I think sort of it goes to the sort of when we saw the pandemic coming, God, 18 months ago. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, man. In many ways, and in other ways, it feels like it's kind of
Five, 10 years.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. We decided to give the software away for free to schools. And, the Zoom was designed primarily for the enterprise and, where you've got great IT organizations, great teams, etc. And, suddenly we're giving the software away free to schools. And they didn't deploy it the same way as an enterprise would, and all sorts of weird and sort of unacceptable things started happening, and we had to pivot and sort of make a variety of changes to the platform, and then we pulled out of it. So it sort of goes to the notion of sort of no good deed goes without some pain, and that being said, it has been sort of an incredible 18 months. Sort of being able to serve the world, Zoom operating in something like 226 countries and territories, governments, helping people connect. Like you said a moment ago, your parents, 83 years old. It's kind of like, my father-in-law, 82 years old. It's Zooming with his grandkids, and friends and family all over the world. It's kind of like, I think it's, sort of, if there is a silver lining to COVID, I think that it's the fact that people have discovered new ways of connecting with their friends and family around the planet of all ages. If you go back pre-pandemic, it's sort of, I look at my kids, it's kind of like they would always be using images and video, etc., to connect to their friends. It wasn't so common for people who were more mature in their age, but now this is like a common theme. It's like
Standard.
my wife and I were at dinner last night with a couple of friends outside. Um, and sort of on both sides, it's like there's tables, sort of distanced away. But people were talking about some Zoom event that they were on recently, and it's like I wasn't wearing anything Zoom. So,
That's
so
always nice when it kind of happens in the social circle, right? It's a nice justification or a validation
yeah,
that like, hey, it's really entered kind of the
but it
lexicon.
has been it has been a very humbling experience. So
So I guess, obviously you guys had rapid growth, fueled by the pandemic, and you're spot on, right? If I look back pre-pandemic, because obviously we've known each other a long time. I think I was a luddite in many ways, where I just felt like I didn't really want to be on video meetings. Many people were trying to push the envelope, get ahead of it, and now it's really kind of this commonplace thing. But I think also with that commonplace thing is you've had this rapid growth. There's probably a leveling out. Like there's only so much saturation. There's only so many places you can reach. How are you driving continued growth, even now that it's become this household name? Like what's that way that you're continuing to go out and try and capture more market? Is there more market to capture? Like what's the kind of plan for growing from here?
Yeah, so if you ask that question to Eric Yuan, our CEO and founder, he would answer it exactly this way, which is, while Zoom is 10 years old, we're only just getting started. So more to come on that.
Okay.
And advise you and others, sort of to listen to Zoomtopia, because we're going to have some pretty amazing. We've made some pretty amazing announcements, and we're going to
going on right now. Is that just about right?
So yesterday, September the 13th, was the keynote by Eric and by Oded, our head of product. So if you missed it, then I advise you to sort of Google Zoomtopia 2021, and you'll find the recordings.
Okay. We'll definitely have to check it out.
But so that being said, it's like and if I were to disclose what they're going to talk about, I think that could be a CLM, so I'm not doing that. But that being said, it's the virtual world, I think, is sort of people have endorsed video for connecting. We aren't, sort of by a long way, no one is done. When you look at financial services as an example, how wealth managers connect with their clients. Not to mention any names, but one of our clients told me recently how their advisors are connecting, sort of 5 times the number of clients per day than what they did pre-pandemic. Wow. Because pre-pandemic, they'd get in the car, they'd Uber,
travel,
fly.
Yeah.
Now they're like, boom, 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 right? Investment bankers, are able to connect with their clients and get deals done. Because look, it's like video, sort of, when Eric founded Zoom 10 years ago, video is the new voice. Look at you, you're nodding. What does that tell me? That's that nonverbal cue that you're agreeing with me. Awesome. I can move forward faster. You shake your head.
Well, and by the way, not to I guess kind of shamelessly plug it, but I think one of the value propositions I see from a Zoom perspective compared to other teleconferencing platforms is the codec, right? I mean, it really is real time. It really is. You can have a conversation. There's not a 10-second delay. There's not like you didn't go all kind of crystally and kind of sound like you're underwater. And so it does maintain that fidelity of experience. Is there some special sauce? Is there something in particular like that you guys are continuing to do to drive that and make it better, or like is that just kind of the key, crown jewel, the fact that you figured that piece out?
That's our Coke recipe.
Makes sense. That makes sense.
And also, just to pivot back, is like they're not being done. If you look at retail as an example, retail are no longer looking at digital transformation. They're looking at digital disruption. Talking to a retailer, they're looking at sort of changing the buying experience. So then, one organization is going to run an experiment where they're going to take some of their retail stores and make them into showrooms. Mm-hmm. And then take other retail stores and make them into distribution centers. So now you go to the store, you try on a jacket, you try on a piece of clothing, you like it, it fits, looks good, right? So what do you want to do? You want to buy it, right? Okay, well, you can buy it. The only problem, it's not so much a problem. The only issue is you can't take it with you because it's a showroom. But what will happen is by the time you get home, the article will be there waiting for you.
Makes sense.
Or, when you get to your hotel, it'll be there waiting for you. And I think that's like pretty awesome. My wife and I were like, in the city a couple of weeks back, and, we were doing some shopping Saturday afternoon downtown Manhattan, went to Midtown, to meet my father-in-law for dinner. And, we walk in, sort of carrying all these
All the
bags.
bags.
Wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have the bags?
It's funny. It works in some places, right? Because I feel like, oddly, and this is maybe going back, 10, 20 years ago, but like Disney World used to do that on property, right? You buy something, they'll just bring it to your hotel room. I feel like that experience, bringing that to kind of the rest of the world makes sense. What is Zoom doing to help enable that? Or how are you participating in some of that kind of retail transformation?
Yeah, so we have our customized SDK, which is sort of the ability to take the components of Zoom, whether it's the video component, the audio component, the chat component, etc., and embed those components into your proprietary application. So we're actively engaged with several of our clients in having that immersive experience, so that sort of imagine you are have an issue with your, I don't know, with your um, with your bank account, and sort of, and now, so typically what do? You start a chat session, or you'll make a call. Well, imagine if you were doing that chat session and you're able to elevate that chat session into audio. So now, rather than chatting to someone, you're actually talking to someone. And then you
Mhm.
elevate that into screen share, so you can actually show something
Sure.
to the person. Elevate it into video so you can actually see the person. And think about it, because sort of when you place a service call, typically sort of you're aggravated about something. You're saying, like, no one ever calls the help desk to say, hey, you guys
You're
are
doing
doing
a
a
great
bad
job.
job. That sort of notion. So it's kind of like, sort of, but when I can see the person who's helping to troubleshoot or solve my issue, it sort of takes the whole stress out of it, if you will, right? It's kind of like you develop a relationship. It's like, seeing person, the nonverbal cues, etc.
Well, there's also probably some lack of anonymity. I think it's easier to yell at somebody who you dehumanize a little bit, right? I mean, like, they're on the other line, or maybe they're a chat bot, or like, you don't know, so like you're willing to yell, right? I think it's part of the problem of the internet and Twitter at this juncture in our lives, right? But
Yeah, but
you know,
it's a level of frustration. It's like, we had some water in the basement, so we called called the insurance agent, right? And the insurance agent, it's like I'm trying, I had to have 3 calls with them, and then I was trying to explain to them what happened, and then they have to dispatch an engineer to come out. The engineer comes out, so I asked him how long it took him to get to my house. An hour. He's here for 15 minutes. What does he do? He takes some
takes a bunch
photographs
of pictures
and leaves, right? And so it's two and a
backwards.
quarter hours of this person's life.
Yeah,
Imagine if I was having this call with the
show them
insurance
right there.
agent,
Sure.
and I, like, put it on my phone. I turn the camera on. I turn it, and it's like, and here's what I'm talking about. Oh, got it. Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Think about the productivity. Think
Yeah.
about the efficiency. Think about, it's like I had to schedule an appointment. I had to make sure I'm here, and I had to be here for a 4-hour window for this sort of person to turn up to take some pictures. It's like aggravation.
It's incredible.
Yeah. Now the
Well,
opportunities are, so going back to your question, the opportunities are immense, especially
absolutely.
now that sort of the planet really understands that video is the new voice.
So, and I think, you kind of raise a good point, especially even in the context of retail, in the context of kind of the new experience, right? I think at the moment, still, because there is still a pandemic going on, and because, there are still some concerns about, I'll call it the day-to-day life, video for a long time, especially in the height of the pandemic, was kind of the only medium that we had to connect with one another, right? Or it was maybe the best medium. Certainly, we could make a phone call, but video was the only interaction. Now that we're thinking about returning to the office, which, it's getting pushed off a little bit because of whatever variant, and I'm sure there will be 3 more iterations of that variant over the course of the next 2 years before we actually fully go back to some kind of office. But the big kind of, $64 question is, what is that net new kind of hybrid, model, right? When we come back into the office, how do we take some of these mediums, some of these modalities around video, around what we do Zoom day to day? Because honestly, if we're just, sitting next to each other and Zooming with everyone else, it kind of seems almost a little dystopian to a certain extent, right? So I am a big believer there's a reason to go back to an office. I think there's collaborative things that happen in person. There's interactions that are necessary, but I've been thinking a lot, and I know a lot of your peers and my peers out in the industry and the kind of world are really trying to figure out what is that right net new thing that video becomes an enabler instead of kind of a detractor, right? How do we find that in between space? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, great topic and lots of thoughts, and you'd be surprised if I didn't. So,
We've only got about 5 more minutes, Harry, but go for it.
I'll talk fast then. So, first off, work is something we do. Work is not a place. It's kind of like, we used to say in the morning, to our significant other, to our kids, and going to work now. That was really a lie because you weren't going to work. You were going to the office now. That's the place. Work is not a place. The office is a place, and enterprises around the world are rethinking what's the purpose of the office. And most have come to the conclusion, like you just said, it's a place for co-creation. It's a place for brainstorming. It's a place where we'll come for ideation. It's a place where we will come together to work together, but it's not a place where you necessarily need to be to work. So that's one. Two is, or rather one and two. And three is, sort of what we've experienced over the last 18 months is, the democratization of meetings. If you're on a meeting with 8 people, everybody's head is the same size. It works for introverts, it works for extroverts. There is no hierarchy in the room. The ability to include, to be inclusive, the ability to have equality amongst the people is profound. And so what we want to make sure is that we don't lose that when we go to this hybrid work model where you're going to have some people in the office and some people working from not necessarily home, but working from anywhere. So, we introduced rather in July, Smart Gallery. And Smart Gallery is really cool. If you haven't experienced it, I advise you to take a look at it because I know you and I know you will love it. And so it's the notion of if there's 2 or 3 people in a conference room, typically, on video, you'll see the conference room and you'll see the 2 or 3 people in the room. But as a remote participant, I want to see the people's faces. I want to see those nonverbal cues. So we're using artificial intelligence to actually not identify who is in the room, but identify that there are people in the room and then stream those people out as individuals.
Interesting.
To the remote participant. So I see the room. I see the 3, but I see the room with 3 people, and I see the 3 people, and as I'm talking, I can see their nonverbal cues. So it's the same experience for me as a remote participant that I had when everybody was in the virtual world.
Oh, very cool.
Very cool. Yeah. We got our persistent whiteboarding that'll be coming out later this year, and so this is all sort of working towards the notion of how do we make the virtual experience as good as, if not better than, the in-person experience. We just released our events platform, which Zoomtopia has been running on, which is like pretty cool with sort of the green rooms and lower thirds. Sure. And all the sort of cool stuff you'd expect on an events platform.
Very cool.
But again, this events platform allows for you to have a virtual experience that's better than in person, because in person, if we were all in the hotel together, you and I could go outside the room,
right?
We could have a conversation outside the room, wouldn't
sidebar concept. Yeah.
So but in the virtual experience, we can have the one-on-one conversation and still see and hear at a lower volume what's going on inside the room.
I like it.
So pretty cool stuff, and love to chat with you about.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that definitely sounds like exactly what we've been looking for a long time. So I definitely want to talk about it. One last question for you. So can you give us a fun story, like your favorite time that you were in a Zoom or something that happened, even if it's an embarrassing story? Give us something. Like, what was your favorite one moment? Obviously, it's been a somber pandemic. So what was a good time?
Yeah, there's so many of those. It's like, having a conversation with a client, and we're chatting like one-on-one like this, and then suddenly she goes, Billy, the FedEx truck, quick. Because she had a return, and she lives in a remote part of New York State. There was another time on a board meeting, not a Zoom board meeting, another board that I'm on, and the CEO is making his executive presentation, and his wife comes in and goes, Ed, need you to hold the baby. And he's like, sweetheart, I'm in the middle of a board meeting. And she goes, that's an answer to another question. Here, boom. I need to go outside for a minute. So he's
There
now
is.
holding the baby, continues with the executive presentation. Nobody says anything,
Nope.
not a word. It's like this stuff is kind of like normal. He's like, the cat tail going across the
Of course.
screen. It's like
Of course.
dogs barking. No, it's like, by the way, we have noise cancellation for dogs barking. So we've eliminated that
I have
problem.
noticed that. It works out well.
Yeah, but we
Yeah.
can't get rid of the cat tail, so that's a different challenge. But
We'll work on that one next.
work on that.
So first, about that, I think it's always nice when you have some of those humanizing moments, even if you're the CEO of a company, and you still have to hold the baby, right?
We're humans, man. We're humans.
That's it. That's it. And I like the fact that Zoom is bringing a human touch to what is a very disconnected time. So really appreciate you taking some time to chat today, Harry. And we look forward to all of the announcements. We'll go check them out from Zoomtopia today and yesterday. And I think, I certainly look forward to more conversations and what's to come. And thank you for enabling us all to not wear pants and to be able to wear sandals. And I also like that quote of work is not a place. So we'll look forward to more to come.
Great.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Anthony, thanks very much. Appreciate the time, man. High five.
Cheers. Be well.
Okay, you too.